Thanks for joining us. Welcome to the Catholic View for Women, the show with news and views from a truly Catholic perspective. I'm Teresa Tomeo, along with my co-host, Astrid Bennett Gutierrez from Hispanics for Life, and Janet Morana from Priests for Life, Silent Lamore, and also you're very familiar with her, of course, on EWTN Radio, and as a co-host of Defending Life right here on EWTN Television. And the topic for this episode is certainly an interesting and challenging one. We've entitled it, Gray is the Devil's Favorite Color. And we've done that for a few reasons. First of all, this is a great quote from philosopher, doctor, professor, author, and convert, Dr. Peter Kraft. And he said this really about moral relativism, and referring to, of course, Pope Benedict XVI, often talking about this dictatorship of moral relativism, where everything is gray, nothing is black and white, it's okay to do this, that, or the other thing. Yes. But from a women's perspective, we're also tying it in with this phenomenon really that's happening right now with a lot of women, and even many Catholic women we've found, are getting into pornography, unfortunately, more and more. And specifically, and Astrid, I know we're going to talk about the article I wrote, specifically the book, for example, of 50 Shades of Grey, which is being turned into a movie and which has sold, unfortunately, millions and millions of copies. And as I said, many Catholic and Protestant women are reading this now, which is a real shame.
And I was surprised to even hear about it.
Right.
I mean, I didn't know the book was so. Astrid was going to say to me, "Well, Janet, it's in the supermarket. It's
in the airport. It's everywhere.
It's all over there." And I wasn't even aware of it. But when you told me, I was like, "Oh my goodness!" And like you're saying, just average women who, you know, believe in the Lord and everything else are just picking this up and reading it, and then it's a temptation that's taking them down a wrong curve, a wrong road.
And it's mainstreaming pornography, and pornography is a sin. But don't you think it's because women think that unless they're sitting down and watching something that this is okay?
Yeah,
I mean, why do you think it's catching on so much?
Well, we know that pornography is an epidemic, so we know it's everywhere. I mean, my goodness, young people are assaulted with now with technology, with texting, with the internet. It's so readily available. You cannot even drive down the road without being offended by some image, which is really, really sad. And we know how terrible it is for marriage. But what's striking about the situation with this particular novel, 50 Shades of Grey, is that we know pornography is out there, and but seeing women, you know, the everyday mom, housewife, you know, just Catholic, reading it. So I think what's happening is they might think that it's not really pornography. You know, as a matter of fact, in your article, you say that some people call it mommy porn, you know? So I think it's important to clarify exactly what pornography is, because people think because it's in a book, because it's written, it's not visual that it isn't pornography. But the Catechism of the Catholic Church in section 2354 defines pornography as such. Pornography consists in removing real or simulated sexual acts from the intimacy of the partners in order to display them deliberately to third parties. It offends against chastity because it perverts the conjugal act, the intimate giving of spouses to each other. It does grave injury to the dignity of its participants, actors, vendors, and the public, since each one becomes an object of base pleasure and illicit profit for others. It immerses all who are involved in the illusion of a fantasy world. It is a grave offense, and civil authorities should prevent the production and distribution of pornographic material. It is that damaging. It is that horrible. And we know the effect of pornography on marriage, how devastating it is, how many couples struggle with it, and also psychologically and physically, what it does to the brain of the people that watch it. It's the effect of hard drugs. It's been demonstrated by studies. So spiritually, it is absolutely, it's a mortal sin, but it's also extremely, it creates a pattern, and it's not love, and it does not contribute to love.
And also, too, you know, you were mentioning that, well, for the women that are involved in actually doing the pornography, you know, the movies and the things and the pictures, it also leads to abortion. And that's a known fact. And these filmmakers of pornography, that's what they do. They know they'll lose their job shooting porn unless they have an abortion. So it's also, abortion is tied in.
Well, it would have to be. I mean, the whole contraception, abortion, and sex trafficking is
all
very
big. It's all tied together.
But this, what I find so interesting about this is so many contemporary women are referring to this as a love story. When, and just briefly describing the book, and I didn't read the book, I read about it, and I read some excerpts from it that were online in preparation for the article, and it's really, really graphic. But it is about a woman who graduates from college, and she's very inexperienced, she's very young. She meets this multi-millionaire, and he wines and dines her and takes her, you know, to all these fancy places and buys her all kinds of things. And he actually is very much into sadomasochism. And so this relationship, this very violent relationship ensues, and the women you talk to who are reading this book are saying it's a love story. Well, she helps him and she helps him mature. And I'm like, seriously?
No.
Since when did the women from our age group, right, in their 50s and their 60s, who grew up with women's lib, think that this was okay, that this is what a woman was supposed to be?
Right.
Beaten by her partner.
It's that distorted, our image of love, of what sex is, what it signifies, and also who man is supposed to be for women. You know, we're not in adversarial positions. We don't use each other. We are supposed to be in awe of each other, and we are supposed to be a blessing to each other. And especially what the sexual act means, what God intended. This is a very
total
cheap
perversion
of it, yes.
But I think it's important for us to understand how we are desensitized by this. And we took the opportunity to talk to two young women. What this is doing to young women on college campuses where they have so much access to the internet and they're so influenced by the media. We spoke with two young women from the Focus Ministries, Fellowship of Catholic University Students, about what's happening with young women, why they may be turning to this, but also how it does desensitize one to sin, hence gray being the devil's favorite color.
You know, we see it every time we turn on the TV, every time we flip on our computer, when we walk in the grocery store and we see all the magazines, everything is leaning us towards this. And what's worse is, in my case, it was my own family. I had a family that was poorly catechized, that had a difficult time expressing to me what virginity was, with a mom who grew up in the 70s and in the 60s, that she had embraced everything that was woman, that she had told me that I needed to have this. And that is her poor catechesis and her poor formation of understanding what God is calling us to. And when our own family is unable to support us, the light mentions from the pulpit aren't enough. It isn't enough when everything that is pointing at us is saying, this is what you need. It is when we have programs like this and we have work like Focus that starts to tell us this isn't what you're made for. You are made for more, that we start to see the grace of God, that we start to see His plan for our life rather than the devil and the secular world.
There's a friend of mine, and there were some Catholic women that she's in a mom play group with, and these women were all, she wrote an email to these women saying, watch out for this book, 50 Shades of Grey. It's really pornography in disguise. Watch out for it. And the women pushed back with, this is a beautiful love story. We are happy to be reading this book. This is a great, we're defending this book. And, what I try to do is, there's so much bombardment. We're constantly being bombarded. Even mothers, you go to the grocery store and 50 Shades of Grey is on sale, 50% off, right there in front of you. That's how it is. And so for me personally, I don't think twice. I look past it. But I know that there are women my age, women with young children even, in college that are reading this, and this is just normal literature fare. And so what I try to do is, rather than even address it, address something deeper. What is it that's drawing them into this book? Where's this desire coming from? Why do they need this? And so if we can get to, like the woman at the well, she had a deep well, a deep aching. And so we want to talk, what is that deep aching, ladies? Like, what you really desire is Jesus Christ. And I will say, God is my first husband. Zeke is my second husband, and really no one can fulfill me, not even my husband, the way God can. And so that place that we're trying to fill with these other things, I try to not even address it. I try to address the deeper longing and get to the deeper things with them. And that seems to help in, making a possible turnaround.
Seeing people in true joy with our Christ, our Lord and our Savior, to see, there's this beautiful skit that we did at a retreat that you, as the sins, slip the chains onto the arms of the innocent. and you start to see how that drinking becomes a chain. You start to see how the pornography becomes a chain. You understand how the seduction becomes a chain, and as they try to reach towards the Lord, how much harder we have made it for ourselves. How much more difficult it has become as we inundate ourselves with this culture. It absolutely weakens my moral compass, my guiding light. It weakens what I think is okay, what I think is acceptable, what I come to say is good for my life. It shatters everything when I choose to read, when I choose to watch, when I choose to surround myself with something that is already so overpowering, so seductive, and I let it in even more.
Well, you know, seeing what happens on college campuses, and also I think it's an awakening for our viewers to say that I think very often people think the sin of pornography happens with just guys
Right,
looking at
right.
porn. But this is another form that it's sucking women into. And I remember in a previous season we had another expert on to talk about this, and a lot of women too are on the internet in pornography relationships, like where they're emailing back and forth on these sites where they get into a porno kind of relationship in their dialogue with people. Because for women, it isn't visual, and that's what this book plays out.
Right. It's the love, it's the romance, it's the whining and the dining, that
right.
kind of thing.
And
right.
I think
The illusion, the fantasy.
and they don't even think of it as pornographic. That's the scary part. You know, everyone just thinks it's pictures, so they think they can do these things, and they don't see it's having a harmful effect on them.
I had a woman actually write me when I had Susan Brinkman, who does a great job. She's an expert in this topic, and she does a lot of writing. She works with Janet Begovich's ministries, and she's a award-winning Catholic journalist, and she did several interviews with me on my program about it. And after our interviews, one woman wrote me and said she was a pro-life activist, and she was pro-NFP, but she just thought this book, and now there's a series of 50 Shades of Grey books, were so just charming, and she sees no problem with it. I said, do you realize that by purchasing this series, you are so being counterproductive to what you're fighting for in terms of against abortion, you know, all your pro-life activism,
Modesty.
contraception, modesty. So everything you proclaim to be supporting out there
is being torn down.
is being torn down
by these
Exactly.
books.
I saw it all over Facebook too. Catholics that I knew were Catholic might have been, you know, indulging in it, and maybe just like the little guilty pleasure. And I'm thinking, my goodness, what kind of witness are we giving to each other? And I think that's why we have to continually be forming our mind, because the world will catechize us if we
well,
do
but
not
that's what happened in this
let the-
case. But that's where
exactly.
that whole idea of gray comes from.
Yes.
Let's take a break, and when we come back, and this year what we're trying to do is give you some saints who are great examples for us and can strengthen our relationship with God. And we have two saints for this episode, and I think you're really going to enjoy them after the break as well. Stay tuned. Welcome back to Catholic View for Women. I'm Teresa Tomeo, along with my co-host, Astra Bennett Gutierrez from Hispanics for Life, and Janet Morana from Priests for Life and Silent No More. And Janet, it's so important, and this actually was your idea to include this in the third season, having saints for every topic so we can ask for their intercession to help us with a particular issue. So who are our saints for this topic?
Well, the first one is St. Maria Goretti, and her feast day is July the 6th, and she was born in 1890 in a poor family in Coronado, Italy. When her father died, she was only 10 years old, and she had to assist her mom in taking care of her brothers. In the town where she lived, she was pestered by the advances of a young neighbor, and she resisted this pestering. You know, he basically wanted to have relations with her, and he started threatening her, and finally he stabbed her to death. And but she maintained her virginity intact, and she was canonized in 1950. And she's a protector of young women, and also when people want to pray for the virtue of chastity, they pray to St. Maria Goretti. And of course, Teresa, you and I went
to her house.
We went to the house where she was
in
raised,
Nettuno.
where she in Nettuno,
where she was attacked.
where she was
actually have it
attacked.
marked.
They have
Right.
this place marked. It's
Yes.
like a little shrine there and beautiful flowers. And we actually also went to the church where she is.
And she's often, her intercession is often sought in people struggling with this issue, because the young man that attacked her later confessed in the jail when he came around and came back to his faith, and he was there in St. Peter's with her mother for the canonization.
How beautiful.
He said that it was the influence of pornography that was partly responsible for his actions.
Right.
Absolutely, it led him to murder, in fact. You know,
Right.
this young innocent woman. I read her story when I was a child, and I was so inspired by her love of God and her martyrdom. I thought, how amazing that she was willing to die for God, you know, and instead of sinning. And so I was so inspired by her. I chose her as my confirmation saint. So I'm Astrid Maria. And she, also, what I also love about her story is the influence of her father. Even though he passed away when she was 10, he was the person that taught her the love of God and also her dignity and worth. I think that was a big part of why she was so strong. So to encourage others to also understand the role of fathers in our lives. They're so powerful because when we're children, they're the image of God for us. And they also teach us about our worth, being daughters of the King.
Now, a saint that would be for, let's say, women who are maybe our age would be St. Margaret of Cortona.
That's right, and she's our other saint, St. Margaret of Cortona, and I have to get my iPad here. Her feast day is February the 22nd, and she was born also into a poor farm family at Laviano, Italy, around 1274. She too lost one of her parents at a young age. She lost, her mother died when she was 7, and her father then later remarried, and she was mistreated by her stepmother. And she also is known for praying for people who have temptations. You know, that's one of the things. Also, people who are falsely accused, homeless people, people who have lost parents, people who are suffering with mental illness. But also, in addition, she's also someone to pray for reformed prostitutes, to pray for her. And people who have sexual temptations, well, that's pornography, right? Sexual temptations. Also for single lay women is also people, as a protector for people, to pray for that. So both of these saints, when you think of it, both Maria Goretti and Margaret of Cortona are very deeply tied into this topic.
Right, and St. Margaret of Cortona lived quite a, I mean, before she obviously turned her life around, she lived quite a, how do you want to say, a sordid life in terms of living with a man, getting pregnant out of wedlock, but yet she was able to turn her life around, and so there is redemption. We need to remember that, and there's always a chance to come back. But this is serious stuff, and I think what Katie said, how there's this constant desensitization, this gray area, because you're seeing more and more mainstreaming in the culture, in the media, these programs that are promoting adultery, that are constantly promoting sex outside of marriage, and portraying people who try to remain chaste as backward or out of touch with reality. So there's this constant bombardment of telling us that gray is the devil, you know, gray is fine, doesn't matter, there's no black and white, there's no real sin, whatever makes you happy, that kind of a thing.
Well, look at how far down the road, like you were just saying, TV has gone. I mean, the programs that are on TV now, and even in the early afternoon hours, that young children could be flipping them down and watch. It's almost pornographic in the vocabulary and all the sexual innuendos that are happening, and
or lack thereof,
and you have to say to yourself, well, this is how we're keep going further down this road. You know?
Well, we have some good homework assignments, so Janet, if you could go over that for us, that would be great.
Well, first of all, as always, and I know in your books you do this a lot, that people should be doing a media check.
Media reality check,
of their home and of themselves. So first of all, how much are you watching TV, and what are you watching? What about the computers in your home? Are they all in bedrooms with your kids with iPads and things where they can get on the internet and who knows, watch things that they shouldn't? So every home should do a media check. Also too, there's a great website, chastity.com, which will give them more information on how to follow the chaste way and battle against pornography. Of course, we'll have the quote from the Catechism up there for them to refer to. And all this will be on the CatholicViewForWomen.com, our webpage. They'll just click on where it says episode, the title of our episode, gray is the favorite color. From that, it will take you to all the homework and things we've quoted.
And also my article, have a link to the article.
And Teresa's article, which is also quite good. And I think what you have to do is don't be afraid to bring this discussion up. You know, say to someone, did you hear about that book? that's terrible. I hope no one I know is reading that book. You know, you really have to almost be an ambassador of this message
and
out there.
Share Teresa's
article.
It's called the Gray is the Devil's Favorite Color.
Anybody
share it on Facebook. People will read it. It's a wonderful article, very informative, because we have to be proactive to counter what's going on in the culture.
Too bad we can't put an article in. That's what we should do. Go into the book, print a bunch of your articles, Teresa. Go into a bookstore and fold it in half and stick it in all the books. So anyone buying the book
exactly
has to read Teresa's article. This is bad for you. Because what you're saying, we just said, women who wouldn't go down this road are being led astray.
Yes.
It's interesting when I would point out to the people who wrote me after Susan Brinkman and I discussed this on my show, when I sent back that catechism reference, this is a sin, and it's a big sin. Okay, it's a really big sin because we're talking about sex, and this is a big topic for the church. Not that sex is a sin, but in terms of the way this is distorted. Right. And then they wouldn't write me back, or they'd write me back and say, "Oh." So anyway, some things to think about. And there is a reason that gray is a devil's favorite color, because the devil does not want us to see things as black and white. He wants us to think everything is okay so he can continue to lead us into sin. But we have the answer here, and that is the Catholic Church, and of course, a relationship with Christ in the Catholic Church. So we hope you go to our website for all the details, and we hope that you really do a media check, and take advantage of some of these resources. I'm Teresa Tomeo, along with Astrid Bennett Gutierrez and Janet Morana, and we hope to see you next time on The Catholic View for Women. Thanks for watching.